Hi, everybody. We're going to give it a couple of minutes to allow a few other folks to join us. My name is Richard Wood. I professionally go by RB Wood in both my
Anyway,
writing
folks,
and my
we
career
have
as CEO
three
of
of
Ruadán
17
Books
authors.
for our second in the City anthology. And with me today are three really lovely people who are up quite late tonight to do this with you all. And appreciate their time, and I appreciate everybody's time who's joining us. First off is Di Booth, who wrote a story that takes place in Chester in the UK. Next is Ross Baxter, who wrote a story that takes place in Oslo. And last and certainly not least is Xan Van Rooyen. Did I finally do that right? And they wrote a fantastic story for both the original in the series city called Winter in the City, and for Spring in the City. And the Spring in the City story is Helsinki. The way we're going to operate today is it's going to be very casual. We're going to introduce each of the writers a little more in depth, and I'll read you their bios, and they will read a bit of their stories, one at a time. And then we're going to talk a little bit about inspiration, the process of writing, the process of putting the anthology together, etc. In the background, you'll see two names possibly in the chat, uh, Deborah Brannon and Elizabeth. They are part of our marketing group, and they are fantastic folks. So if you've got any questions, just put it in the chat. Also, my co-editor Anna Koon um, has just joined us as well, and she will be a part of our little celebration. Now, first, I should address the fact that this is called the second launch for Spring in the City because we encourage writers from around the world to submit to us for our anthologies. We have, in fact, got writers from around the world. So we did do an initial launch that was more US based with US based writers. It's a time zone issue, and quite frankly, um, I'm hoping to get to a point where we do three of these in various regions of the world as this series continues to grow. We've done winter. We're going to talk today about spring. We have an open call right now for Summer in the City, which will be the next in the series. And my guess is everyone on the call can guess the fourth title in the series, which will be Autumn, because saying fall in the cities sounds more like an insurance scam than anything else. After that, we haven't decided what the next set of stories will be, but we will come up with another group because I really enjoy these in the city anthologies. First of all, we do like to read stories submitted from new and underappreciated and under promoted voices that we've seen out there. Um, all of our writers who have joined us certainly this afternoon and this evening have experience writing elsewhere. However, I hadn't heard of them before they first submitted to us, and neither had my co-editor. And we were delighted not only to find their stories, but to find such talent. And we get to share that with you guys today. So, from my perspective, I will pretty much shut my trap other than to play goalkeeper for this wonderful event that we're recording for you guys right now. And we'll jump into our stories uh, and meeting our authors and chatting with our authors. And Dee, I started with you before. I think I'd like to start with you again, if you don't mind. But first, let me just tell people, read people your bio. I'm reading the bios that were sent to me. The beauty of working with writers is bios are never fixed. They're always changing. And I'll bet you there are things potentially to be added to these bios since I received them before Spring in the City came out. Dee is going to write or read from his story that takes place in the UK, specifically the city of Chester. Is that correct, Dee?
Yep, that's correct.
And he is an indie author who likes wild beaches and exploring dark places, which is a good thing that he's working with us because we like both those things. We're not writing. He DJs alongside his boyfriend at Last Rites, the best and only goth club in Chester. You can read his prize-winning stories in anthologies from Aegis Press, Neon Hemlock, Lame Tree Publishing, and many others. His books, including his cursed novella Cool S, are available online, and he's currently working on a queer coming-of-age folk horror novella. You can find out more about Die's writing at diebooth.wordpress.com or say hi on Instagram at dieboothwrites or bluesky.diebooth.bsky.social. All of our writers tend to be somewhere on social media. Maybe not all the platforms, maybe some, maybe one, but you can reach out to them, and they're all very, very responsive. Um, Di, I would love to have you talk a little bit about the inspiration for Chester, and then maybe read a bit from your story, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm really happy to be part of this anthology. So, thanks so much to the entire team for the hard work on this and for organising second launch. So, my story, Chester, is basically based on an urban myth from my own school days in the area. And this myth centered around every school in the area, depending on which school you went to, obviously. And so I've set it in the 90s with a group of teenage school friends. Shall I say what the urban myth was, or is that spoilering?
No, I think you should say what it is because it's really an interesting myth.
So basically, when I was probably more in junior school, primary school, than high school, we'd grown out of it a bit by high school, I must admit. There was a myth that if you went round, if you went round a conifer tree in a specific school, which was always whichever school you went to in the area where I grew up, and chanted "Belinda, Belinda, beware, beware" 3 times, then the ghost of Belinda would appear in the tree. And so she was meant to be, she was reputed to be a schoolgirl who hanged herself in a conifer tree at school for an unspecified reason. And when she turned up, I think it was some kind of Bloody Mary situation and she would kill you or something. But again, unspecified. But when we were all little, we would all sort of go around conifer trees chanting "Belinda, Belinda." So that is the urban myth that this story is based on, but it takes a different turn. So, is that cool? Shall I read?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind. I think it's a great myth, and I think you have some fun with it in your story. Go ahead.
Cool. Okay, so quick content warning for recreational drug use and underage alcohol use. Underage teenagers, they're 17 in this. Okay, so here we go. And warning for me having to pronounce a Welsh place name that I'm trying not to think about. Here we go. So this is Chester. Then Llanfair, Pwllgwyn. Is he okay? Jake's whisper comes out louder than he intended, but Dave doesn't hear him or doesn't care. Owen says, yeah, he does this when he's stoned. Gish Gogeric, Chwindrobo. Dave lets out a low-pitched giggle as he rocks gently back and forth on the flagstones. They're all tucked up someone's path, a side entrance to the pink flats by the old bridge, the chalky bubblegum hue of the pebble dash overhanging them bleached grey by the hungry night. Jake flashes Owen a look of alarm, and Owen grins and hands him the joint, loosely wrapped and ashy. Chlanticilio, go go go. Still rocking, Dave looks, despite his hazy smile, worryingly pale in the darkness. Just he looks like he's about to whitey. The second Jake says it, Dave executes the mildest yet most effusive vomit that Jake has ever witnessed, spraying in a golden fan across the dirty flagstones. The girls squeal and rocket to their feet, quick enough to make Jake's head spin. He takes a showy drag on the joint, purposefully not inhaling too deeply, and passes it back to Owen, checking to see if he's looking. "Oh God, it's running downhill," Emma says. Dave smiles softly, still rocking. Jake says, "Come on, let's get the drinks." He needs a walk to clear his head and escape the smell. And he gets to give Owen a hand up as he hauls himself to standing. It feels a little mean to leave Dave there, but only a little. "He'll catch us up," Owen says, zigzagging the width of the walkway as Jake tries to bump into him but make it look accidental. It's almost pitch black now this side of the river. They navigate by familiarity and the few lights spangling the high dark waters from the street on the other side, like glitter tossed across satin. When they get to the bushes by the suspension bridge, the crossed iron latticework of the bridge tower is barely visible, silhouetted against a midnight blue sky. The air here smells clean again. Clean green leaves budding, sweet damp mud, the sluggish brown river scent still cool enough to be fresh. By instinct alone, Jake digs in the deep leaves just inside the dome of foliage until he feels the clink of his nails against glass and comes up with a bottle of Thunderbird. "Ladies?" "Cheers." Vicky takes it and passes the next one to Emma. Groping through the undergrowth, Jake digs deeper, feels a fleeting gut drop before his fingers finally close upon his bottle of cider. Not stolen then, while they were all at the pub. He pulls it out, brushing off the leaf mould and cradling the 3 litres like a weighty baby as they all follow Owen beneath the bridge. "Not here." Emma looks up for a brief second. The lights across the river catch her eyes like a cat's. Conifer tree. She carries on down the way, plonking herself in a clear space on the slope of grass leading down to the lower path, directly bordering the riverbank. "What?" "Belinda," Owen says, and Jake can hear the smirk in his voice. "Who's Belinda?" "You know, Belinda, Belinda, beware, beware." "Shut up, O." Emma actually sounds a little anxious. Jake watches her take a long pull of wine, shuffling closer to Vicky on the grass. And Jake does know. He's not heard that chant or thought about that name since primary school, but the lore is lodged deep in there, tucked up in his memory as cosy as any innocent bedtime fairy tale. The girl who hung herself in the tree. "Hanged herself," Owen says, and Jake punches him in the arm. Even that small contact feels warm on the chill spring night. And if you walk 3 times around her conifer tree saying the words, then a skeleton appears in the branches and I don't know. Owen rubs his arm slowly, kills you or something. "Belinda, Belinda, beware." "Shut up, Owen." "That was a tree at Mill Lane," Jake says. Carefully avoiding the green spikes of daffodils already emerging from the earth, he finds a space on the slope to sit. It's not just any conifer tree. She can't teleport or something. That makes no sense. Ghosts haunt the place they died, right? Vicky says, "It was Our Lady's High anyway," as if teleporting is the biggest logic problem with a ghost story. Jake shakes his head. He says, "Our Lady's High, I bet she is," aiming a sideways grin at Vicky. Close beside him, Owen laughs, and it pulls a warm, syrupy feeling in his guts. He's drunk already, but he could be drunker. The plastic of the bottle dimples and pops beneath his fingers as he twists open the lid with a crack and takes a chemical-scented swig. He catches Emma's eye. "You have to walk around the tree and do the rhyme. She can't just turn up." "Or can she?" "Shut up, Owen." They say it at the same time. Jake grins and leans forward to link pinkies with Emma. Jinx. "I wouldn't be scared of ghosts anyway," Owen says. "I'd be more scared of drinking from plastic bottles. You know, you can spike a plastic bottle with a syringe." "Whatever, man." Jake takes another swig. purposefully long, to prove to Owen and himself just how much all the horror stories about spiked drinks don't bother him. The lights on the water twinkle, beckoning, as a breeze stirs the trees and ripples the black surface of the river. He offers the bottle to Owen and feels just the tiniest prick of rejection when Owen shakes his head. Dawn Hunt's cousin said a girl from her school sat on a syringe hidden in a cinema seat and now she's got AIDS, Vicky says. Jake shivers, wipes the back of his mouth with his arm. Bullshit. Don't believe me then, it's just what I heard. Emma says, yeah, but you know about the corner shop on Beckett's Lane when they found pins in the pick and mix? Jake closes his eyes, forces the shadow of anxiety from his mind, letting their voices sludge together into white noise, tidal as the River Dee beyond. The cider is taking hold, making his mind fog and his belly churn, and he hopes that he's not going to show himself up by puking like Dave did, not in front of Owen. Except it's an abstract sort of hope, as if he's floating far above his thoughts and nothing matters anymore. It's kind of relaxing. Shuffling down on the slope, he lies back and can somehow feel every individual grass blade through the fabric of his hoodie, cold and prickly, as if he's becoming part of the earth, the night air like a piece of silk laid over his face. Jake? When he opens his eyes, there's nothing but darkness. He feels no panic, but for a moment he's confused, until he focuses on twinkling, distant pinpricks and remembers that he's lying down and staring at the sky. If he tilts his head backwards, he can barely make out the tops of the trees, black on black. A figure flickering like heat haze, drifting up there, just about visible, even in the dark. Jake! Jake sits up. He feels lightheaded in the weirdest way, like he's high. Okay, then he's probably, definitely just high. The others are yelling, but he's never felt so mellow, a marrow-deep peace like the warm touch of summer sunshine on this cool spring midnight. What's up? Nobody answers him. He looks down. Someone is lying on the ground, the four others crowded around. Dave? He knows he should be worried, but it all feels so fine. Dave's just stoned and passed out, and he's going to be all right. Wait, four others? And there you go.
That was fantastic. Thank you. Oh, look at all the applause.
Oh,
Excellent. Great reading as well, man. You set the tone perfectly for that. I appreciate that. We'll circle back to you in a little bit when we do an open up for a general conversation about what else you're working on, and that's what I want to hear about that novella, quite frankly, because it sounds very interesting to me.
Cool.
Next up, Ross. I think we'll go to you now. Let me read Ross's bio, and he'll talk a little bit about the influence of the story and read you a bit from his story called Oslo. After 30 years at sea, Ross Baxter now concentrates on writing sci-fi and horror fiction. He originally started writing westerns to while away the long hours at sea during the lengthy night watches, the wide open spaces of the Old West distracting from the close confines of a warship of the New West. His varied work has been published in print and on Kindle by a number of publishing houses in the US and in the UK. He's married to a Norwegian with two Anglo-Viking kids, and he now lives in Derby, England. Ross?
Thank you very much for that, Richard. This is going to be a difficult thing to follow. Actually, it was such a good reading before. I'm sort of getting a little bit nervous now.
Don't be. It's a great story.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for everybody's time, and it's great to be here. So, quite a few of my stories are actually based in Norway. I'm part of the reason is I'm married to a Norwegian, sort of two Anglo-Viking kids. We have a house in Norway on the west coast, which we usually go to. Certainly not this time of year, but spend a lot of weeks there, during the summer. So it's a place I sort of know and love, and Norway's a great canvas for any sort of story because I think of all the countries, it's a country of such change since sort of German occupation at the end of the Second World War, and how quickly it's evolved from a relatively poor country in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and then oil was discovered, and suddenly rocketed that country from being, one of the poorest in Europe to one of the richest, if not the richest country in the world. And that change within sort of a 40-year span is difficult for any society to sort of come to terms with, because within a generation, certainly 2 generations, people can remember the dark days, and now the new wealth which has come out, and that's it's almost to me a bit like the United States, and the rapid evolution of things in the States, within a short period of time, sort of 200 years. It creates a big canvas, and certainly a lot of opportunities. Now, obviously, Norway's a lot smaller than the United States and doesn't span so many time zones or geographical zones, but it's always a good. It's a place where you can generate a lot of good fiction, especially dark fiction, which is what my story is. Now, the character in this book, she's appeared quite a few times in other stories. So, Inspector Christine Vestvik, she's an inspector in the Central Oslo Police Department, and she's appeared a few times. So it's nice to get her out again, and put her in this one. So I had a lot of fun with this one. Now, spoiler alert, I am terrible at reading stories out loud, so I will stutter and splutter, and if I do, please don't be polite. Just tell me to stop. I think my wife will probably throw something at me as well. So if you guys don't, I'll probably get something thrown at me. So please, don't spare my feelings, because I know I'm not very good. So I'll give it a go. I'm not. What I thought I'd do is I'd read just a couple of pages, and that takes us to up to the scene where they enter a tent with some pretty gruesome bodies. And now my thoughts are, you've probably not had your supper yet, anybody. So I don't want to do that description yet. So I don't want to put anybody off. So I'll do a couple of pages. Let's see how it goes if I get there. But as I say, please shout or scream, even if if it is that bad. So, right, I'll begin. So, Inspector Christine Vestvik breathed a sigh of relief as she saw the clutter of police vehicles ahead and the uniformed officers blocking the entrance to the small bay at Verkenbukta. The drive out from central Oslo had been difficult, the roads clogged with those wishing to escape to the mountains or the fjords for the weekend, given the forecast of good early spring weather. After showing her identification to the police blocking the car park, she swung her unmarked Volvo to park by one of the black vans of the Oslo coroner's office. Despite the sunny forecast, the skies over Oslo remained darkly grey and overcast. The ice still covered much of the bay, now closed off by her colleagues. Grabbing a cap and a heavy jacket, she left the car and trudged towards the gaggle of officers huddled from the chilly wind behind a large police incident tent by the shore. 2 police inflatables chugged slowly between ice floes in the bay, with divers on board chatting and drinking hot coffee. The officer by the tent saw her approaching and quickly broke off to meet her. She recognised Sergeant Alandal from his shoulder insignia and shock of ginger hair poking from beneath his police cap, and smiled a greeting. "Long time no see," Vestvik said, shaking the sergeant's gloved hand warmly. "Too long," smiled Alandal. "I appreciate you coming over." "Well, Verkenbukta in March is not top of my bucket list," she replied, glancing at the empty body bags laid out on the icy beach. "The last time I was here with you was when we were both cadets. What, 20 years ago?" 21 years ago, Alandal corrected her. "Back in the time when all cadets were brought here during basic police training to toughen them up, I've seen lots of dead bodies in multiple states of decay. It's not in the curriculum now." "Thank God," Vestvik muttered. "I had nightmares for months afterwards." "Me too," the sergeant conceded. "But now I work for South Oslo Police District, so Verkenbukta is part of my patch. I have to do this every spring now." "It still amazes me that Almost everyone lost in Oslo Fjord usually washes up here in this small bay. They used to say it had something to do with the tides, the currents, and the underwater geography, but it's still pretty strange. Then comes a fateful day in spring when the ice melts and nearly 5 months' worth of corpses from around Oslo are recovered here in a single day. All the suicides and the accidents. It's a very harrowing day for everybody. It's truly the worst day of the year, Arundel agreed. No one in the South Oslo district wants to be on duty today, which is why it's a bit strange, after not being in touch for years, that you asked me to come here to this dreadful place to meet you today, Vesvik frowned. Sergeant Arundel's face reddened a little as he looked back towards the huge white police tent on the icy shoreline. The dive boats just recovered the last body. How many corpses do you think are lying in that tent? Vesvik followed the sergeant's gaze. She shrugged. 21 years ago, they were 26. Oslo's grown since then. My guess would be around 30. Wrong. We've only recovered 9. Well, that's good then, isn't it? 2 years ago, we recovered 32 bodies, Arundel replied. Last year, we only found 14, and this year, just 9. Yet the population of the city is at an all-time high at 1.9 million. Accidents around the water and suicides have both increased in line with the growth in population, in fact, more. But today, we've recovered less than a third of the expected corpses, and strangely, only 2 are male. The inspector stared at the tent for a few moments in contemplation. Then, the decrease in numbers must be something to do with the hydrography of Oslo Fjord. Maybe the currents have changed. Maybe less water's coming in from the mountains. Maybe something that has to do with global warming. Not according to the University of Oslo. They say nothing significant has changed in the fjord in the last 30 years. The tides, the currents, water temperature, and salinity are all the same. So, are the Oslo Police District looking into this? Vesvik asked. That's just it, Arundel said, shaking his head. I've tried to raise it a number of times as an issue, but the senior team are just ignoring it. Well, maybe there's nothing to investigate, Vesvik offered with a shrug. If the South Oslo workload is anything like our workload at the National Criminal Investigation Service where I work, this would be well down the list. I need to show you something in the tent, said the sergeant. I'd rather not, muttered Vesvik, wrinkling her nose. Decomposing corpses will put me off supper tonight, and my partner is making raspala. Now that's it, because we now go into the tent, and it gets pretty grim for a while since now. And I've not stuttered as much as I thought I would stutter, but I'll spare you the rest if that's okay.
I think that was fantastic, Ross. It was very, very good.
You did good. You did well. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I mean, I saw one of the questions pop up from Elizabeth. She went, "Oh my God, is that really true about the bay being the hatch basin, if you will, for all these corpses from the winter?"
I mean, there is some truth in that they don't all collect in the same area, but given the geography of a lot of Norway, the bays do ice over, the fjords do ice over, things get trapped there, and if you've got sort of 4, 5, 6 months worth of detritus, I suppose, which builds up, floats to the surface, sort of gets stuck under the ice. When the ice eventually sort of melts, you do get quite a few things which are washed up. Our house is on the west coast, so it's not so cold in winter. But the fjord around where we are, and we're probably about 100 meters from the fjord, that does freeze, and it is interesting to see what's sort of trapped in the ice. I've not seen any bodies yet, I'm pleased to say, but plenty of fish and seabirds and stuff like that. So there is a bit of truth there. But fortunately, it is not. It's not a factual story.
Well, thanks. Thanks for letting me sleep a little bit better tonight. I appreciate it, Ross. I think you did a great job with the reading.
Visit Norway in spring.
Well, my family, my mother's surname was Carlson, and she is Norwegian and Swedish. So I've been told that I need to go back to Scandinavia, and quite frankly, I can understand why. I keep moving north anyway. I started off in New York and I keep moving north. I'm in Boston right now. Thank you for that. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of your other writings in a little bit. But next, I really want to go to our delightful author, um, Xan Van Rooyen, and their story, Helsinki. Xan originally wrote for
Stockholm.
Winter in the. Sorry?
Stockholm.
Stockholm. Helsinki was the original story. I had it in my head that I wanted to talk about it, so that's what came out of my mouth. See, all these young people have to keep me on track. Otherwise, I just completely fall apart. What can I tell you? I can see Anna's laughing right now, and I'm ignoring her completely. That's my co-editor. We'll talk to her in a minute. Zen, let me read your bio, and then I'll let you read, and then I will try not to show my embarrassment for the rest of this event. So bear with me one second here. So Zen's bio: climber, tattoo collector, and peanut butter connoisseur. Xan Van Rooyen is an autistic non-binary storyteller from South Africa, currently living in Finland, where the heavy metal is soothing and the cold, dark forests inspiring. Xan has a master's degree in music and, when not teaching, enjoys conjuring strange worlds and creating quirky characters. You can find Xan's stories in the likes of Three-Lobed Burning Eye, Daily Science Fiction, and Galaxy's Edge, among others. They have also written several novels, including adult etherpunk novel Silver Helix, which, by the way, is delightful, and the forthcoming YA Gothic cyberpunk novel Second Soul. Xan is also part of the Sauti-verse. Did I say that right, Xan?
Sauti.
You see, I'm just going to make sure Xan joins me on every call and corrects me because I need it, apparently. Thank you. An African writers collective with stories in the multi-award nominated and winning, by the way, anthology Mother Sound.
Winning.
Didn't you win with Mother Sound?
Yeah, I think it has won something. I can't remember what, though. It was honestly nominated for so many things, I lost track.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Xan has also had a number of nonfiction articles published, which you can find in Afro-centered futurisms in our speculative fiction, Bloomsbury, Australia, and You're Not Alone in the Dark by Cemetery Dance, among others. You can find Xan on social at symbol Xan_writer. Xan, let's talk a little bit about your impetus for sending in yet another story for us, which we were delighted to read and publish. And we'll talk about Stockholm. See, I got it right that time.
Yeah, well, again, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to have a second story published with you. I had such a good experience the first time around with my story, Helsinki, and I loved the anthology and what you did with the stories, that I felt compelled to write something for spring. And because I spent 18 months in Stockholm between I was living in Finland at the time, but we moved to Stockholm for 18 months and endured one of the worst springs in terms of the pollen count. I think it was an El Nino or La Nina, I can never remember which one, but the pollen was just unreal. It was the worst spring we've ever endured. I thought that was a perfect setting for this story that I wanted to tell about. Everyone thinks that spring is such a wonderful time of the year, and this spring nearly killed me. So I felt that was a good place to start with the story. And I also wanted to explore what being an immigrant felt like in Stockholm from my own personal experience. The true nature of Stockholm once you scratch away a little bit of that very pretty veneer, what lies beneath it. And I also wanted to reconnect with my own Viking heritage and Norse heritage, and tell us a lesser known story, or allow a lesser known character from the Norse pantheon to be the protagonist of my tale, or antagonist, depending on how you see things. But I have a lot of sympathy for this character, Ithun. So I'll now read from Stockholm. Goy. Ithun wakes to blood and fire, veins split, feathers singed, offering from the downtrodden and deceived. Across the sacrificial stone they write their stories. Careful fingers turn red, spill into sigil calligraphy. Runes beseeching, pleading. Revenge, a sweet rejuvenation. Darkness thickens before the dawn as frost crackles a waning defiance. But, inexorably, the season shifts. Ithun lingers beneath the mantle of winter dreams, ensconced in the nightmare memories of her own mistreatment. She breathes in the ash and salt of sacrifice, rage roiling in her empty belly. How she hungers for the retribution she was denied. Awake, Ithun shakes out the humus-knotted tangles of her hair and rubs her wrists, then presses her fingers into the divots on her ribs, remembering. The trickster's treachery, the giant eagle who snatched her in his talons, gouging, marring, scarring. How she was taken and how no one came for her. No one even lamented her disappearance until the gods began to wither in her absence. Then came the grudging, fear-fueled rescue, and oh, how she resents it. That to be saved, she was made small and insignificant, folded into an acorn, stolen once, twice, all for the benefit of others. There was no justice, no righteous vengeance, only a return to the husband who sighed in relief when his longevity was restored. The sky ruptures, light herniating through the cloud as Ithun stretches, her delicate fingers curling into fists. I'd hoped to abandon my inner demons, to shed them like old scabs, but my demons are needy codependents, snarled up in my double helix, an epigenetic stain. Somewhere above the wadi-sculpted expanse of empty sand, I morph from emigrant to immigrant, trade autumn for spring, depression for hope, and still these varmints of the mind remain. I'd hoped they'd be shredded by the X-ray soaking at the airport, had hoped border control would revoke their visas, prayed customs might recognize them as contraband. But the voices in my head remained as I passed from red to green. Velkommen till Sverige, parasites and all. Stockholm is a city divided, its parts sheared and scattered across an archipelago, its heart fractured, its runnels filled with the snow-rimed waters of the Baltic. I'd imagined picnics on emerging lawns dotted with precocious flowers. Instead, pavements are slushed with melt during 2 short days, turned slick and treacherous by freezing nights. I slip and skid and fall, each tumble smearing bruises over scars like lumpy frosting on a lopsided cake about to topple. Coming here was a mistake. My demons cackle a relentless tinnitus. Did you think a change of address would undo the damage? Now my new home lies well north of the postcard-perfect center, in a neighborhood hugging the edges of a preserve littered with history. Kista. The name means box, or coffin. As I navigate the meandering roads too narrow for a fire truck, I inhale. Onions and garlic, tamarind and cumin, cinnamon and coriander. My neighbors are Jordanian and Iranian, Eritrean and Somali, Russian, Romanian, Japanese, Finnish. Near or far from home, we are all outsiders here. Watch out for ghosts, my landlady tells me with a gap-toothed smile. See that hill? It's a burial mound. She points into the forest hemming my winter-rotten garden. Something twitches deep inside my alleles, a chemical jolt within my mitochondria. Perhaps my Viking ancestors are mouldering in that dirt. I hope the ghosts here haunt me. Maybe then I'll feel like I belong. Tuck, I say, when my landlady leaves. Afwan, she responds. It'll get easier. She squeezes my hand and my eyes burn when she lets go. Then the door closes and I am alone, with only the voices in my head whispering admonishment. My new home, a corpse cradle. Ithun hunts. She sachets down narrow alleys, cobbled and quaint in Gamlastan. She struts along broad avenues in Östermalm, where trees stand sentinel in cultivated rows. In shadow form, she slips under cracked panes in crumbling apartments or through ornate keyholes on antique doors. Late at night on the tunnelbana platforms, she wafts past stumbling bodies sour with piss and cards her fingers through their hair, their souls, sampling their apathy or despair. In the morning, she stretches in the guise of timid sunbeams across brunch tables, lapping at the laughter spilling from the beautiful and bejeweled. Sometimes she dresses in breath and bone to mingle at a bar, smoky-eyed and demure, or to flirt at the gym, perspiring but mindful, peering behind their entitled smiles to see the darkness festering beneath the perfect veneers. Quarry found, she stalks them home before pouncing with nails like scalpels to open their chests. Her prey, all so alike, thinking they can take without consideration for those they leave bereft, without consequence for their greed. With deft fingers, she excavates the cavity, chews on gristle, savors the gore, all the while imagining the trickster who betrayed her and the Jotun who confined her, used her, almost broke her. The hearts, picked clean, she keeps. In their stead, she leaves cursed apples, golden flesh concealing a putrid core, before snapping ribs back in place with a gobbet of saliva to seal the wound. Finally, she will have her vengeance. And I'll leave it there.
I was pretty sure I knew where Di and Ross were going to leave their stories, but I knew exactly where you were going to leave your story. um, Before we get into some questions and answers, folks, I just want to talk about two things. One is each of the stories, the 16 stories, 17 authors, and then an 18th author who wrote a delightful introduction, Mercedes Yardley, for us. One of the stories was co-authored by Sue and Duff, wrote about Montreal. The cities come alive in these stories. You get a feeling by the end of that story that you have, at the very least, spent some time in Chester or Stockholm and earlier Helsinki, Oslo, and then Montreal and Detroit and Los Angeles, the other cities, many other cities that Vancouver are in our anthologies. That's key. You know, right now, we have a season, we have a city, and then we have kind of the dark fiction, the supernatural perhaps, or the noir detective, which is more on Ross's bent. That's this type of stories we love. But all the stories have the same thing in common, that these three authors in particular, and all of our authors in general, did very, very well. And that is create a sentient city that you get to know in a very short amount of time, 3,000 to 6,000 words. Along with that are characters that are dripping with personality and filled with emotive exposition that really bring you to that city. You can taste the dust. You can feel the cold. You can see the colors of the flowers of spring or in the melting ice in certain more northern regions, right? This is the stories that captured both Anna and myself because they're just well told. And that's how we all discover who we are as people, by telling stories. It's an important aspect of being human, which is why we are, till our dying breath, avoiding any sort of AI artwork, whether it be written or visual. Okay. because I want to hear what's in people's souls. You heard a little bit from Xan right there about how she felt as an immigrant coming into Scandinavia while discovering their roots, right? You heard a little bit from Ross about a place that he loves, his connection to Norway, and even an outsider's view, even though I suspect he's really not anymore. He's been going for quite some time, right? And then you hear the childhood wonder and fear of you know preteen and teenagers doing what they do. They push boundaries, they explore, they test the limits of what they're about. And that exploration through the dark fiction of Di Booth is just three of the stories that are in Spring in the City. Yeah, I run the publishing house, but these collections of stories mean a lot more to Anna and myself. And Anna, I know I haven't asked you to chime in quite a bit this time because I know it's the end of Anna's also a visual artist, and this is the end of her show season, and she is making it through the holidays on her last little wisps of petrol in the tank, right? So, but I think you and I are on the same page with what we look for in these stories. Sentient settings. I want to feel what the city's like. I want to explore humanity. I want complex three-dimensional characters, and I want a story that's going to stick with me for a while. Would you agree with that? Are there other things you look for?
Yes, I apologize, everybody. I actually sat down to watch Caught Stealing yesterday in front of a fire and fell asleep. Like that's where I'm at right now. And I woke up and was like, what happened? What? So yeah, I'm kind of regrouping after 5 art shows over the course of the last several weeks. And that means you're interfacing as an introvert with thousands of people, and yeah, it's not always easy to do that. So it's a little draining. So I'm coming out of that a little bit. I'm actually doing okay today. Our first launch, I felt like I was just a pile of mashed potatoes trying to talk. Yes, I mean it's funny when we were talking about doing seasons in the city. I thought spring was going to be a kind of a tough one because I do think people think of spring as bright and cheery, and whereas and then I mean I'm literally looking at it snow right now here in Boston, but which is gorgeous, but it's a lot of that too here. It's a lot of brutality, sort of these fits and starts and false hopes, and I feel like everyone kind of hooked into that in their own different ways, and
Hmm.
these stories. I'm really excited about this book as an anthology. I just think it all came together so well, and that's because of all of you. It's just fun, and it's great to have people like. I was so excited that Xan submitted another one because I love their work, and I was introduced to their work through Helsinki, and even made a note, which Xan knows, made a note to Rich, like, we need to work with this person. This
I
person.
actually have kept the note on the original story for Winter in the City, where she wrote with two exclamation points, which she never uses, "We need to work with this person." It was fantastic. I believe I believe that we are going to continue to do so, which is delightful. But let's hear from our authors a little bit more. Guys, thank you for the readings, and Ross, your reading was fabulous, right?
Yeah,
You
that's so
hooked me.
good.
You
That's
you,
great.
you hooked me in it, and I really actually. My wife and I watch Forensic Files while eating dinner, so corpses and stuff don't bother me, but I can understand why you didn't want to put people off, and I appreciate that. But more importantly, I think the influence for your writing is important. Let's start with that question. We'll toss it out for all three of our writers. And where where do you find the influence for your stories, your life experience stories? I just gave the answer, didn't
I the natural environment, like the wild, going out for
I?
walks, exploring countryside,
Mm-hmm.
for mine mostly.
Do, do you live in Chester?
Yes.
I mean that's an interesting city in itself. It's there's some really old parts of that, a lot of Tudor sort of stuff and all that sort of business. You know, the old medieval walls and the Roman influence. I would imagine that city in itself is a pretty good, you know, catalyst for stories.
There's a lot of ghost stories. There's a lot of history. Yeah, mythology. I mean, I'm more sort of folk horror-y, like folklore than anything, I think, these days. So.
You see, Xan is also not nodding their head because there's a nice academic as well as story background with folklore, and of course, Ross has got a huge history of that as well. Although I would like to read more of your Western stuff because I had a love of Westerns from my father back in the day. So we'll talk about that at some point, Ross, as well. Where would you say you said in your bio, Ross, about spending long watches and writing stories to while away the time there. You know, what was it just a desire to get off the ocean in someplace drier?
There's nothing more boring than being on the bridge of a ship, any ship, at sea, you know, on the first dog or one of the later shifts, 2 o'clock in the morning, you can't see anything. And if you're in the ocean, you literally can't see it. There's no lights, there's no buoys, there's no shoreline. The ship's usually, you know, you've got your navigation lights on and stuff like that. Everything is red on the bridge. And there's nothing to see and almost nothing to do most of the time because you know you're looking at the radar or you know there's nothing there. It is very, very dull. You're just waiting to react to something which hopefully never happens. So you know, depending on the size of the ship, and I spent a lot of time on minesweepers, which are smaller vessels, probably a crew of about 35, 37. You're the only one on the bridge at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's dull. It's just dull, but you've got to keep yourself awake. So, you know, inventing stories or telling yourself stories in your head is it literally is one way to pass the time. You know, between yeah, endless cups of coffee and everything else. So yeah, I mean, and that was some time ago. It's even worse now, I believe, because you know everything's automatic. So all the navigation systems are automatic. You know, you just clagged into, you know, the route is automatic. You know, long have to take fixers and the old Astro fixes is long gone. So yeah, I would imagine it's even worse now. But yeah, that was one of the things. And I suppose it's. I mean, I used to take a lot of books with me, and sometimes there's nothing worse. It's almost like, you know, going for a good curry, and then it finds out it's a bad curry, and it's something you've been looking forward to for a long time. It's like you take a book and you get 10 pages into the book, and you're just thinking, no. I can't, I'm not going to invest any more time in this. And then well, I was going to say it goes overboard. I'm not that environmentally friendly, but, and part of it was thinking, well, I want to sort of read what I want to read. And, so I think the boredom on one side and the, you know, a desire to sort of, you know, read the good stuff after, you know, and especially before the time of the internet, where you didn't have the reviews for books. You know, you would go to the local bookshop. I'm showing how old I am now. And buy a book without having that sort of feedback, which now it's probably gone too far the other way. When you know you go on Amazon, and there's 1,000 people who want to say something about it. But yeah, I think it's just part of that. But I can't, I can't describe how boring it is on the bridge of a ship mid-ocean. It's incredibly boring. So you do need to do something now. Now I suppose you can play with your whatever Game Boy, which is not a euphemism, or something like that. So yeah, I can't tell you how boring it is.
Well, thank you for that, Xan. You've got such a great background. I mean, there's I think all three of you have a lyricism to your stories, but you especially with the two story, well, more than two stories, but we'll save that for a minute. Um, there's a lyricism, that comes, I think, from your music background. I think Di's done the same thing, and I think Ross has done the same thing as well. There's a poetry to your language that you're using in your stories, and all three of you have that sort of poetry. But you have such an interesting background with education and where you've lived, etc. You know, coming up with the stories, what other influences are there for your stories?
Yeah, similarly to Di, I grew up on a diet of mythology and musicals. And so the intersection of these two things was basically my childhood. And the the love for these two things has just continued to grow as I've got older. And so any opportunity I have to kind of marry these two influences in a story or weave them together in a story is like fundamental to me.
Hmm.
I also think that, yeah, just music is my life. It is my first uh, like I guess artistic uh, special interest and passion that started when I was an infant and has never gone away. Um, and I hyperfixate on music and bands and lyrics and things all the time and always have. And I think that's just a huge influence for me. I am often inspired by imagery in a music video or by a particular lyric. And several of my stories have evolved from an image in a music video or a lyric or even a certain um, feeling within a song. And I'm like, how can I capture how I'm feeling right now in a story? Like, how do I transpose this? How do I transliterate this into a story? And that's often been inspiring for me. And then in my later life, a lot of travel and finding quirky, peculiar things about places that I can
Hmm.
then kind of make a part of the world building in a story. Um, or yeah, just oddities when I travel. I love finding the quirks and the oddities, and then I can kind of like riff off of that in a story setting in terms of world building. So I do enjoy that as well as a source of inspiration. And then I've sort of come to realize as a late diagnosed autistic person that I guess a lot of my writing has actually been me trying to process the world that I just really did not understand and have always kind of felt very much an outsider of, sort of somebody peering into a world that everybody else seems to understand fundamentally, and I've missed something. No one gave me the instruction manual. They just, I'm supposed to just know stuff. And so, yeah, when I look back at especially my earlier stories and a lot of my poetry and my writings from my teenage years, I can definitely see that there is this like I'm trying to process, not just from a sensory perspective, although a lot of my writing is very sensory based because of how much sensory information I'm constantly processing, but just trying to like figure figure life out and figure people out and characters kind of become the stand-in for sometimes aspects of myself or moments in my life that I then just kind of have this post-processing that I do via story. And that's very much like Stockholm and Helsinki to some extent, but definitely in Stockholm, it was me
Hmm.
very much like reassessing, reworking, addressing a lot of the experiences that I had. Thankfully, I didn't meet any sort of semi-cannibalistic goddesses while living in Stockholm. But the rest of the immigrant experience was very much came from my own lived experiences.
Wasn't for a lack of trying, I'll bet.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have bumped into semi-cannibalistic goddess, actually, but alas.
Well, look, my son is on the spectrum. He's has Asperger's. He hates it when I tell people that, but you know, that's life. He's 29 now. He'll get over it. But he learned to process what he was feeling and how to socialize through his own writing.
Hmm.
And I actually think and the more I get to know you, and I think you are as well, I think you'll end up being, if you're not already, better than most people for taking the time to do that. Okay, they didn't give me an instruction manual. All right, I'll figure it out myself, right?
I'll write my own.
Exactly right. And I think you'll end up more well-rounded and more of an expert on the human condition than most people who are considered not autistic or normal or what have you. So now, look, guys, I know it's 2 minutes after the hour, and we're going to go on a little bit longer because I want to hear what each of our writers is working on now. But I wanted to first check in with any of the people who are watching us right now to see if there were any questions out there or if anything has come through the chat. I'll give it a minute or two. You saw Deborah has written in the chat that if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. And it looks like Jana's got a question and their hand is up right now. So if you throw the question in the chat, we'll read it out loud for everybody, and then we'll go from there. Should I hum while people are typing away?
Elevator
La,
music.
la.
Elevator music.
No elevator music. Well, so I've seen more stories come in, by the way, for Summer in the City. That's more towards my co-editor Anna, who's already started looking at some of the stories that have come in.
Mhm.
I did notice that we're beginning to get more real stories. We got a barrage of AI stories, a barrage of them, and I run stories through 3 AI checkers just to make sure that they are human. I don't mind somebody, especially somebody who's learning English, who uses a tool like Word or what have you to help with grammar. I don't mind that. What I do mind is the piracy that happens and has happened in the past by works of authors who've literally bled on the page. People taking that and dumping it into an AI modeling tool for use in generating stories. Stories are an exploration of what it's like to be human. It's not an exploration of what it's like to be a computer. So yeah, I don't like it. I'm not going to tolerate it. Not for as long as I'm running this company. I'm only 61, so I'm hoping to be around for much longer. So, are any questions appear in the chat? I see it looks like the number of chat things have popped up here. Deborah or Elizabeth, you want to chime in with some questions to let us all know what's being asked?
Yeah, Jana's question is, for those of you who don't currently live in your featured city, did you revisit or research to get details right?
Yeah, I travel fairly frequently backwards and forwards to Stockholm. We were going once a year since I left, and then COVID obviously didn't travel that much, but I go backwards and forwards fairly frequently to see friends, and also for administrative reasons. So I felt like I was keeping up to date with some of the aspects of the city there, but definitely needed to brush up on some local politics before finishing that story.
I mean, I suppose it's interesting if you look at any author's sort of search history on Google or whatever, you get a shock. In fact, I'm sort of not looking forward to the next time going to the States, because if what we hear is true about all your social media history and search history, my God, they'd have a field day with me. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because because I do a lot of sort of the police stuff. It's getting that process and procedure right. There's nothing. You're absolutely right. To go and visit in person is by far the best thing you can do. But when you have to do the research into, I don't know, the ranks of the Norwegian police force or the procedures or whatever, it's an enjoyable thing to do. It's great to go and visit the city, but it's also great to have a look at some of the, getting into the minutiae of I don't know, process or procedures and stuff like that. But yeah, I was just having a quick look at my search history now. My goodness, yeah.
Let me just chime in real quick as well. There's a book I'm writing right now and a book that I came out with a couple of years ago. The book I came out with a couple of years ago takes place in New Orleans. And I worked there for 18 months back before Hurricane Katrina, so in the early aughts, as they call them. And I wanted to go back and do some exploration there. So I spent a few days down in New Orleans, and because there's a significant criminal and police presence in my story, I'll put it that way. I actually went to a couple of the local bars where I heard the police hung out, and a few of the dicier places where not police hung out. And I bought a lot of drinks and spoke to a lot of people and have probably 3 books worth of stories that I came back with. And that research, to Ross's point, is extraordinarily fun. What I'm working on now is a police procedural that takes place in Ireland. And I travel to Ireland once or twice a year myself. And I also made some friends with the Gardaí, or the guards, are the police force of Ireland, and I made a lot of friends with the retired guards, especially the detective sergeants who are the ones in the field running the investigations, and they were delightful in helping me get facts straight. I got stories from them, some of which changed a bit, but appear in the book. For example, there was a missing woman, and they found her because somebody were walking their dogs in the Wicklow Mountains, and the dog came back with a bone, and the bone had bits of sinew on it that stretched back about 50 meters to where the body was, and that's how they found it. So, yeah, research is important. You have to get your facts straight. And nowadays, what you have is they call them sensitivity readers, but it's really a combination of sensitivity as well as fact checkers. The character I wrote in my New Orleans story is a woman of mixed race, and there's a lot of history of mixed race people in New Orleans. And I am fortunate enough to be friends with a very diverse set of people who I could share that story with and say, look, I want to get this 100% right. Did I get it right? Yes or no? And if it was yes, they said so. And if it was no, oh, they said so. So it's important to do your research as a writer. Jana, thank you for the question. Anything else, Elizabeth?
Yes. Steve asked, are there any themes, trope or slash tropes you feel are overplayed in media that you feel if you ever wrote in their vein, you could really give a reviving, unique take or expression?
Oh, what a great question. Should I throw it to the authors first and throw you guys under the bus so I don't have to think about something, or should we just do this
Yeah,
collectively?
sure. Sure. I mean, I think you can take just about any single trope and make the character not a straight white man, and you immediately have a refreshing, newer take on the story.
Mhm.
And this is why I really am determined to write autistic characters, to write non-binary characters, to write trans characters, because these are people, my people. I am, you know, I wear these labels. I have these labels assigned to me. I identify with these labels, and we don't have enough stories about us yet. So I think that is the way that I would bring a fresh take to just about any single trope, because yeah, we certainly do not have too many trans autistic stories out in the world yet.
So
I feel
points.
so.
I'm sorry, Di. Go ahead.
I was going to say I feel similarly to Xan about that. It's like even when there has been representation in the past, there is a tendency in publishing, or has been, I think, especially mainstream publishing, that when you get sort of queer characters or whatever, they will be aimed at a straight audience to sell books. And so I feel like the way to put a twist on like that kind of character is just to have those characters aimed at like a queer audience as well, and rather than being written in a way that is designed to be palatable to a mainstream audience. So yeah, there you go.
I'm tired of non-white characters being made a stereotype punchline, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at what Robin Williams did in La Cage aux Folles, The Birdcage, right? I think he brought a character to life that is fantastic, nuanced, brilliant, absolutely hysterical. So typical Robin Williams, may he rest in peace. I want to see more of that. And I think what Dai has done, and I think what Xan has done, especially knowing their background and who they are as writers and as really marvelous people, they also write entertaining stories with that in mind and with a diverse and through a diverse lens that changes the whole timbre of the story. That's what and that's what we do at Ruadán too, right? We want to elevate people who are haven't been published before for various reasons. Is it changing? Slowly. Not fast enough for me. I'm old. I'm going to die soon. So I want to make sure that it changes a lot more before I go. And that's part of what we want to do. And that's why I love these stories. They're brilliantly written. I want to hear more from communities I don't personally know about. I mean, don't you?
I mean, it was interesting with Di's story about Chester. There was part of me when I read it, which was thinking, I wish these characters had been in sort of season 5 of Stranger Things. I would have preferred that to be the characters based on those characters. And I've got nothing against the characters in Stranger Things, but it would have been a lot more interesting, I think, to use Di's characters in series 5 of Stranger Things. I think it would have added another dimension. And Zan Stockholm is, I mean, everything you say, I agree with. And but it's interesting. There's not a great deal about things like immigration, and immigration is a massive thing at the moment in Europe and the States. And if you think about westerns, they're all about immigration. 200 years ago or 300 years ago, and it started. But there's not a great deal of stuff out there, even though it's such a big topic in modern society. I don't see it. I'm sure there's stuff out there, but I don't see it. There's a whole wealth of stories there. I think just in itself, and you brought it out well in Stockholm. But there's I think there's a lot more where or there should be a lot more where that comes from. So.
I know we've run over a little bit. How many more questions are there in the queue, Elizabeth or Deborah?
We did not have any more that I saw that came in.
Okay.
just everyone thanking you for the responses, which have all been very great. So thank you.
Well, you guys are welcome, but this is how we all feel about it. It's one of the reasons why we get along really well. Let's do something fun. Let's just talk about current projects that you guys are working on. If you can give away anything, feel free. But I'd love to hear more because I know you all love telling stories. So let's go in reverse order this time, I think. Xan, what are you working on?
Um, well, I'm working on a certain adult dark fantasy book with a certain publisher, Ruadán, and that is set for release next year in October. So I will be getting stuck into the second round of edits on that. I'm really excited about this book. It's the first time I am tackling fully secondary world adult fantasy with an African inspired and Finnish mythology inspired story that I've kind of blended together. So I'm working on that, and that will come out next year. And then I also have my Gothic cyberpunk retelling of Dorian Gray, where Ryan Gray is non-binary and Baz is autistic and trans. So it is a fully queer, ultra queer retelling of that story that addresses a lot of social issues and yeah, coming of age, finding yourself, these kinds of things against this cyberpunk pseudo-Victorian backdrop of the original tale. And that will be out next August from Tiny Ghost Press. And then I am also editing the next Sauti anthology, which is love songs from the Sautiverse through my African Writers Collective. And I'm very excited to be working on that because it's the first time I will be in the editor's seat, which is a little terrifying. So that is it. That is all that I have on my plate for 2026, and that is plenty.
What are you doing after lunch? I'm kidding, of course, but you're going to be a fabulous editor. The only piece of advice I will give you, the only one, trust your instincts. Ross, what are you working on these days?
I'm just putting the finishing touches to a prequel to The Shining, the Stephen King book. There's an anthology which has got, I think it's 13 professional authors of which have already been picked, and after one sort of indie author. So I've just finished it actually, set in seven. So I'm assuming you know the tale of The Shining, the Overlook Hotel, Jack Nicholson, and so mine's set in 1786. There was a historical journey of two Spanish Catholic priests, which went from New Mexico to California and via Colorado and places like that, and it's basically based on. It's nice to get a bit of history and twist it a little bit to be the sort of the start of the Shining sort of storyline, really, because obviously a lot of people, the Overlook Hotel was built in 1907, which is quite recent, really. So I wanted to take it back 200 years before that, and see what I could do with that. So I'm quite excited about it. I mean, it probably won't get accepted, but it doesn't matter because it's a fantastic story to write. Really enjoyed it, actually. So that's it. So I'm now sort of looking for something else to. Well, I've got the hard bit, as probably everybody knows, is I love telling the story. Then you've got to sit down and edit it, and it's interesting because when I was reading my few pages, there's a couple of things where I thought, oh, I could do a bit of change there. But I mean, the editing is the hard bit. And I've got to do that, and that's sort of like but yeah, that's me.
Excellent. Di?
Well, I've got a collection of stories coming out from a small press next year. That is a collection of horror stories with trans protagonists. So that'll be called What It Takes to Stay Wild. So that's hopefully coming out next year. I will say more when I'm more like, I don't know. I probably can announce this, but I just feel like, I don't know, superstitious. So I'm, I don't know. I've got another collection of short stories, queer folk horror, that I am currently putting the finishing touches to, and will start shopping around next year. And I'm also working on a lots of novellas, but the one that I'm definitely determined to finish next year is it's a queer coming of age folk horror novella, which is basically about a young man in a small, like, sort of semi-rural northern town in the 90s who he hasn't come out yet, and then there is sort of a disaster that happens involving him and his workmates, and it's all to do with the like the folklore of the Seven Whistlers. So that's what I'm going to finish next year, and hopefully that'll turn out well. So that's my plans for next year. And I'm not allowed to just write short stories all year again. Like, I just always get drawn into writing short stories because I love writing them. So I'm definitely getting something long form out next year.
It's fantastic. I want to thank everybody for their time today. The fans, the guests, of course, my co-editor, the Ruadán team in the background that are always keeping me straight and on the straight and narrow, as it were. And I appreciate every one of you. So thank you very much, and take care of yourselves. Have a great holiday season, and look for Summer in the City next year.